So I've played 8 different specs in World of Warcraft Midnight using one button. One. And on most of them I'm doing better than I have any right to. The community is losing its mind over this feature. Half the forums want it deleted and the other half says it saves the game for them. I spent enough time with the single button assistant to tell you exactly which specs feel great, to me at least, which ones feel terrible, and why I think this might be the smartest thing Blizzard has done in years. So for those who haven't touched it yet, a quick rundown. There are actually 2 tools here and people keep mixing them up. Assisted highlight puts a blue glow over your bar showing you which ability to press next. You still press the buttons yourself, no penalty, it's basically a rotation cheat sheet, great for learning a new spec. Then there's the single button assistant, the spicy one. You find it in your spellbook in the top right corner. Drag it to your bar and now one key cycles through your entire DPS rotation automatically. It reads your talents, checks how many enemies are nearby and picks the right ability every time you press it. But there's a catch. The SBA adds a 25% global cooldown penalty, so every cast takes a little bit longer. Over a full boss fight, that adds up. You're looking at roughly 10 to 30% less damage than a perfect rotation, depending on your spec, obviously. But let's be honest here, who is doing a perfect rotation among you? Raise your hand in the comments if you are an unicorn. And it does not handle everything, by the way. Major cooldowns, you press them yourself. Trinkets, potions, interrupts, defensives, movement, all you. So you're not literally playing with one button. You're playing with one button for your DPS rotation and managing everything else around it. That's an important distinction because most people screaming about this feature on the forum seem to think you just tape down your one key and, I don't know, you go make a sandwich. But there's another catch, and this breaks it for me on most classes. I would like the option to customize the spells used by this feature. To get rid of some of the spells and abilities, change the priority of some abilities and so on. Because I can live with the fact that I lose 25% on global cooldown, but I cannot live with the fact that I waste Bestial Wrath, for example, on an NPC with 5 HP left, just because the cooldown is up. I like to manually press Bestial Wrath. All abilities that have a cooldown longer than, I don't know, 15 seconds should, in my opinion, be handled by you, not the button. So here's my situation. I don't have time to learn 9 specs properly. Nobody does, unless WoW is your full-time job, and it's not mine. I work, I have a kid, I have a wife, I come home, I want to play something different from what I played yesterday, and yeah, one button seems cool. Before the SBA, that meant one of 2 things for me. Either I stick to the 2 or 3 classes I already know and never branch out, or I spend an hour on Icy Veins reading rotation guides, set up weak auras, practice on a dummy for 20 minutes, and then I can actually try to play. I still wouldn't know what I was doing, but I could try to play. Option 1 is boring. Option 2 turns World of Warcraft into homework, and the thing is, the speed of which you level up in this game prevents you from learning your class properly anyway, so there's that. The SBA gave me a third option. Just play. Pick a class that looks fun, drag the button, go to a dungeon, and that's it. Figure out the vibe of the spec first, learn the cooldowns as you go, and if you like it enough, turn off SBA later and learn it properly. That's what people miss about this feature. It's not replacing skill, it's removing the barrier to entry. And for someone like me who wants to actually experience all these classes Blizzard designed, because I didn't touch WoW in many years, that's huge. Alright, let's get into the meat of it. I played 8 specs with the SBA and they are not created equal. I'm going to rank them from best to worst based on how they actually feel to play, not just the DPS numbers. Because I'll show you footage from characters that were level 81 at the time of recording, 83, 87, 90, so don't mind the DPS you'll see on the screen. I'll just talk about how it feels, and I'll start of course with Beast Mastery Hunter. This is the poster child for the feature. BM Hunter already has a relatively straightforward rotation, and between me and you, you don't even need SBA to run this because you have to press like what, 4, 5 buttons, I mean, come on. But sure, the thing is, the SBA handles this build almost perfectly. Almost. Your pets are doing half the work anyway. The global cooldown penalty barely matters because half of your damage is passive. You just press the button, manage your cooldowns, and your pets go to work. If you want to try SBA for the first time, this is a decent spec to start off. Seriously. My only issue, as I said, SBA casting Bestial Wrath in all kinds of awkward moments, you know. So because of that, BM Hunter is only A tier. But actually you can take over, and if a mob is almost dead and Bestial Wrath comes up, you could take over and just press a few buttons yourself until you make the next pull, and then you go again with the SBA. But yeah, if you're only using SBA, it will cast Bestial Wrath in awkward moments, and I don't like that. I hate it. The next on my list is Demonology Warlock. I never played Warlock in my life, so this one surprised me. Demolock has a pretty complicated rotation compared with the Hunter anyway. Imps, Dreadstalkers, Tyrant Windows, Hand of Gul'dan, timing, it's a lot to track manually. The SBA just handles it. And because Demo is mostly casting with longer cast times, the global cooldown penalty doesn't hit as hard as you'd think. Your army of demons still show up, still does damage, and you get to focus on positioning and cooldowns instead of micromanaging stuff. This one, to be honest, felt great. No awkwardness, just pew pew. This is my most played and geared character in the expansion because of that. So Demo Warlock, S tier, and all of you lazy people, go for it. It feels good, does good damage, and yeah, it's a complete package. Frost Mage. Frost works well because a lot of the rotation is proc based anyway. Brain freeze, lights up, ice lens goes out, the SBA reads procs fine and reacts to them. Where it loses a bit is during Icy Veins burst windows. That extra global cooldown delay means you're wasting a fraction of your burst every time. But for general gameplay, smooth. And the freeze ball with a long cooldown is cast when the cooldown is up, with disregard of the mob HP and or mob numbers around you. At least Blizzard is cast only when you have more mobs around your target. Still, Blizzard doesn't look if your target is still moving or not. And if you're not paying attention, you cast it and it's left behind by a moving target, and it sucks. For those two things alone, Frost Mage for me was B tier. But other than that, it feels good. If you pay a little bit of attention, this is a very cool class. And yeah, Mage was my most played class in Vanilla WoW. I played it for, I don't know, half a year or something, only Mage, and I was Fire Mage. Now, the next one is Devastation Evoker. Evoker has that unique empowered casting mechanic. I have mixed feelings about that, but the SBA handles it decently. The rotation isn't too complex and the spec just flows well with the assistant. Solid choice. So Devastation Evoker S tier. I don't like the class fantasy that much, and I'm not the biggest fan of some of the spells, but the one button gameplay just works with this. The next one is Shadow Priest. Shadow has a lot of dot management and insanity generation that can overwhelm new players. SBA keeps your dots rolling and spends insanity at reasonable times. It won't give you perfect void eruption timing, so I usually use it myself, you know, but it will keep the damage flowing consistently. If Shadow always look cool to you but the rotation scared you off, this is your chance. I mean, yeah. But because of the long Halo and Void Form cooldown, again, I hate wasting a good spell on one mob. This is a pattern throughout this video, by the way. So Shadow Priest, because of that, is only A tier, but solid choice. Now, Balanced Druid. Here's where it starts getting rough. Bunkim has some timing sensitive gameplay with Eclipse windows and Astral Power management. The SBA is fine, it does the job, but you can feel the global cooldown penalty more during Eclipse windows when you want to pump as many casts as possible. It's not bad, but is noticeably clunkier than the specs above. So yeah, B tier for that. Fury Warrior. Oh boy. This is the one that taught me that global cooldown penalty actually matters. Fury is all about speed. Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, Rampage. You're supposed to be mashing buttons constantly with barely any downtime, and 25% more time between every press, and the spec feels like you're playing in syrup, you know. The damage is barely okay, but the feel is wrong. Fury is supposed to feel fast and aggressive with with SBA it feels sluggish, yeah, like playing Fury with 200 ping or something. If you're going to play Fury, I'd honestly recommend Assistant Highlight instead. Learn the rotation with the glow, but keep pressing the buttons yourself. The spec needs that speed to feel right. Not to mention again Bladestorm and Odin's Fury, it feels the button wants you to bleed DPS no matter what, you know. So because of all this C tier, I'm sorry Fury Warriors. Now Protection Paladin. Look, I had to try it. I had to try a tank, and yeah, this again is one of the classes I haven't played before. At least protection spec. And yeah, tanking with SBA is rough, not because the rotation is bad, it actually handles the DPS part okay, but tanking is 80% decision making. When I do Pop Shield of the Righteous, when I use Ardent Defender, am I holding aggro on that pack? The SBA handles your holy power spenders for damage, but it has no concept of damage intake timing. You need those defensive abilities at specific moments, and having your offensive rotation slightly delayed by the global cooldown penalty means you sometimes can't react fast enough, you know, because everything else doing damage takes a bit longer every cast. So I wouldn't recommend SBA for tanking in anything that matters. Delves, sure, dungeons, yeah, whatever. But if you plan to go on a higher difficulty dungeons, use Assisted Highlight instead until you learn the spec. Oh, and again, Divine Toll being on the SBA means you will use your biggest spell sometimes on a singular, almost dead NPC. Yeah, it feels bad every time, and I'm gonna mention it every time. So because of all this, Prot Paladin is B tier, because it handles DPS alright, but it delays your other cooldowns, and Divine Toll shouldn't be included in the rotation period. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. The community is absolutely split on this feature, and honestly both sides are being ridiculous. The go play a mobile game crowd, these are people who act like pressing more buttons equals more skill. And look, there is skill in executing a complex rotation under pressure, I'm not denying that, but here's the thing, the SBA isn't competing with those players anyway. It has a built-in 25% global cooldown penalty, it doesn't use cooldowns, a skilled player will always outperform it, always. What the SBA outperforms is the average player who doesn't have time to optimize, and if your ego is threatened by the fact that a casual player pressing one button does comparable damage to you in a heroic dungeon, maybe your rotation execution isn't as elite as you think it is. I'm just saying, the buff it to be equal crowd. On the other side, there are people who think SBA should be the same, should do the same damage as manual play with no penalty, and no, that's also wrong. There needs to be a gap. If one button does the same damage as perfect execution, then what's the point of learning, you know? The 10-25% penalty is the right call. It gives you enough damage to contribute meaningfully while leaving a clear reward for learning to play manually. What people also forget is the accessibility angle. There are players with disabilities, chronic pain, limited mobility, coordination issues who literally couldn't play certain specs before. So yeah, there's that. Don't forget, the World of Warcraft players, a lot of them are pretty old, like I am, you know, I'm 46, but there are people who play this game and they are in their 60s, so yeah. And then there's the conspiracy theory. A lot of players think the ability pruning in Midnight happened specifically to make the SBA work better. Fewer abilities mean a simpler algorithm means better performance. I don't know if that's true, but the timing is suspicious. Anyway, I don't think it matters, to be honest, if this is connected or not, because they were too many abilities, and I like what they did with the pruning. I'm gonna give you a couple of tips that will help you to get most out of your SBA, and the biggest one I can give you is pay attention to the button, pay attention to your most valuable cooldowns, and stop using it when an important cooldown is up in a bad spot, you know, when, as I kept saying in this video, when the last mob of the pack is dying, just stop pressing it and, I don't know, press 1, 2, 3, whatever, press other instant skills to finish it off and use it on your next pack, on your next pull, because yeah, that's the biggest thing. So another one is always keep your major cooldowns on separate keybinds. Another one is start with ranged specs. The global cooldown penalty matters less when you're standing still casting. BM Hunter, Demolock, Frost Mage, Shadow Priest, any of these are great starting points. The next one is if you want to learn a spec, use Assisted Highlight instead of SBA. That glow teaches you the rotation without DPS penalty, and yeah, use SBA for specs you don't care about mastering, alts, world content, leveling, whatever. 4. You still need to handle AoE cooldowns and target switching yourself. The SBA detects nearby enemies and swaps to AoE abilities, but it won't optimize your target priority in a dungeon pool. You still need to think. 5. Don't use it for tanking in group content. I tried it on Protection Paladin, just don't. The defensive timing issues alone makes it not worth it. The bells and solo stuff, yeah, go for it, whatever. And finally, try specs you never normally touch. That's the real magic here. I never would have played Demonology Warlock or Shadow Priest without this feature. Now, Demo is one of my favorite alts. The SBA got me in the door and the class itself just kept me there, you know. So here's my take on a single button assistant in World of Warcraft Midnight. I love it. Not because I'm lazy, because I have a job, I have limited playing time, and I want to spend that time actually playing, not studying rotation guides. The SBA lets me experience 9 different specs without treating World of Warcraft like a second job. Some of those specs, Demolock, BM Hunter, feel almost as good with SBA as they do manually. Others, Fury Warrior, Protection Paladin, need a lot of manual experience to feel right, and that's fine. That's the whole point. It's a tool. Use it wherever it makes sense, turn it off where it doesn't. If Blizzard keeps the global cooldown penalty where it is and doesn't try to make it replace actual gameplay at high levels, this feature has a permanent place in World of Warcraft. It makes alts fun, it makes the game more accessible, and it quietly exposed the fact that some rotations were way too bloated to begin with. So if you're offended by the idea of one button gameplay, you're probably parsing lower than me anyway, so there's that. Now let me know in the comments, have you tried it and which specs felt great to you? I want to hear it. See ya.